Secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it.
Hello, this is Dane Wigington with the weekly edition of GeoEngineering Watch Radio and Global Alert News. This is a commercial-free news hour on KQMS, broadcast throughout Northern California. For the internet listeners for this show, this is again recorded and placed on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org under the radio section. I want to remind residents in the Shasta County area, or anybody beyond, from Chico or Mount Shasta, or wherever they can pick up this broadcast, that there will be a free screening of a very, very important documentary about 9/11 called 9/11 Architects and Engineers for Truth. This is absolutely jaw-dropping data about what really happened on 9/11, and that the official story cannot be true based on the laws of physics. And when we have 2,500 of the world's top architects and engineers, 2,500, stating on the record, risking their careers and maybe much more, that the official narrative is virtually impossible, isn't that worth our time? Isn't that worth our attention? Do we care enough about the truth, or do our claims of caring about our country only go to lip service? If we really care, people should attend this event. There'll be free copies of that documentary, commercial copies, passed out to those who attend. And we hope you'll share this with others, because our media is not telling us the truth about this event. There'll also be climate engineering documentaries there available to those who attend as well. We're simply trying to get the truth out. Nobody is selling anything. Just like this news hour with no commercials. We are not selling anything. And we're not bridled by the concerns of sponsors who might tell us what we can and can't say. That's why we have no commercials on this news hour. So again, March 12th, Reading Library, 2 p.m., a free screening. We hope everybody will attend that. There'll be flyers at Orchard Nutrition and Reading Radio. About our weather, where is El Nino? Let's ask the geoengineers. Why has it not developed as we were told it would? The largest El Nino ever. Why has it not developed? And even though Reading has had, in the valley, has had close to its normal rainfall, we are not getting the normal exponential increases of rain in the mountain areas. It's not happening. Why is it not happening? Because of the level of particulates in the atmosphere. That changes the orographic enhancement effect, the effect of the mountains. So again, it's imperative that people study the climate engineering issue and understand its ramifications. More on that in a moment. Also later in this show, is our seafood contaminated with the fallout from Fukushima? Are public safety agencies covering up the facts? We'll get to that again later. The dirty, dingy, wispy climate engineering particulate haze stripes, solar radiation management cloud cover continues to be plastered in our skies on most days over Northern California and elsewhere around the globe. I hear from people all over the globe about this every single day. Since the last show, as I stated I would do, I sent an invitation and a request to our local KRCR news anchor and chief meteorologist to please address the concerns about climate engineering that are growing in the communities. KRCR claims to represent our communities. Why won't they address this issue? Here's what I said to Mr. Kruger and Mike Mangus, the news anchor. As I'm sure you are aware, the rapidly growing public concerns over the issue of climate engineering continues to accelerate. As meteorological and media representatives for the North State, through KRCR, an ABC affiliate, it is my hope that you will agree to accept this formal invitation to attend a locally staged public forum in a town hall setting in order to address the public's questions and concerns about what we see constantly occurring in our skies. The lingering, expanding jet aircraft trails often haze out the entire skyline, which, by the way, is the stated goal of solar radiation management programs. If, as the KRCR chief meteorologist, Mr. Kruger believes climate engineering is not in fact going on, the public would like to know on what facts and information such a conclusion is based. I and many others hope you will accept this sincere invitation to address our concerns as local weather and media representatives? If so, we would coordinate a date and time and location for the meeting that would be acceptable to your schedules. Sincerely, Dane Wigington. Sent this message to these KRCR representatives, have heard nothing. The invitation was sent last week and again this week. And again, as expected, not even the courtesy of a reply. How long will our corporate-controlled media be allowed to black out issues of critical importance? It will come down to this. It's up to us, the citizens of Northern California and elsewhere, to picket in the parking lots until the people at institutions like KRCR and the Record Searchlight, our local newspaper, decide to stop blacking out critical stories and start telling the truth. Again, the Weathermen at KRCR, to the Weathermen, if you can't talk about the climate engineering issue, tell us. If that's not the case, why would you continue to avoid addressing this issue in any way, shape, or form, no matter how high the community concern grows? We would simply like to know, for example, how you know that the skies will be mostly sunny days in advance, and on such days the only thing in the sky blocking the sun is what's coming out of the back of a jet aircraft passing overhead. How can a meteorologist predict jet-sprayed haze blocking the sun days in advance, unless they're in fact reading from a script, perhaps by the National Weather Service or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration? Both of these government organizations have all their weather predictions modeling done by Raytheon, a massive private defense contractor for our government that's neck deep in climate engineering patents. Are our meteorologists simply reading scripts? Why won't they address public concerns? As always, again, I have a great deal of information to try to cover in this hour, including the attempt of numerous so-called public health and safety agencies to cover up the threat of radiation contamination in seafood from the U.S. West Coast suppliers. There are some local implications for this in the North State, as I said earlier. Also, will World War III become inevitable as those in power run out of options? And how about the constant respiratory problems that are now epidemic? Is there any connection between this and the growing epidemic rates of other human diseases that are proven to be connected to highly toxic heavy metal exposure? Lab tests from around the globe have long since proven a mountain of heavy metals like aluminum, barium, and strontium are raining down on all of us. These metals are the primary elements named in climate engineering patents. Yes, this is connected to the dirty, dingy, often checkerboard striped toxic mess that we see in our skies day in and day out. If you don't believe it, it doesn't matter. You're still breathing this contamination with every breath, and it's building up in your body. Several dozen lab tests from Shasta and Siskiyou counties alone, about 70, I believe, prove this beyond any shadow of a doubt. Why aren't we being told? Why don't meteorologists and institutions like the Weather Channel say a word about climate engineering? Because they're owned by corporations like Blackstone and Bain Capital, corporations all connected to the umbilical of the global power structure. Does anyone believe the paid actors at the Weather Channel would tell the truth about climate engineering, knowing their jobs, or perhaps much more, depend on them saying whatever they're told to say? Perhaps we could ask Weather Channel meteorologist Nicholas Wiltgen. Unfortunately, though, we can't, because he died last month in what Fox News said was, quote, an apparent suicide. His car was crashed through an Atlanta parking garage and plowed into an adjacent hotel. That's a strange way to commit suicide. But perhaps let's ask the meteorologists at the National Weather Service or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. But no again, because virtually all the National Weather Service and NOAA government employees are still under a federal gag order. Don't believe me, please. Investigate it for yourself. If you're willing to look at the truth, if you want to see meteorologists going to unimaginable lengths of lying to try and explain away the completely unprecedented and completely engineered weather scenarios that are now the norm, watch the Weather Channel for a while. Connect the dots. Watch the behavior of the Weather Channel actors as they give truly an ever more complex and implausible fabricated explanation for weather scenarios that are historically unprecedented and meteorologically impossible without the climate engineering factor. Again, we have engineered snowstorms happening in the West with the center of those storms, like one I mentioned last week, winter storm, quote, Kayla, the center of the low pressure of a, quote, winter storm pushing 80 degrees with tornadoes on the, quote, warm side of the storm. Where is our sense of reason? This is not normal. We have massive temperature whiplash fluctuations from 50, 60 degrees in a single day. This is extremely devastating to the biosphere. And this can't happen naturally. It's from chemical ice nucleation related to weather modification. Please look it up. Look up every term I state. You'll find lots of data if you choose to look. As the public wakes up to the climate engineering nightmare, the crimes of climate engineering, I believe they'll hold accountable as accomplices all those who have lied to hide the geoengineering insanity. Perhaps trials like those held in Nuremberg are coming, one would hope. If you still refuse to believe weather warfare is going on over your head every single day, stand by. As I said before, you'll believe it soon enough. In regard to the ongoing climate engineering assaults, the question of why, of course, and understandably, perplexes those that have not yet taken the time to investigate. Why is our climate being engineered? Though the answers are many and complex, the condensed version is this: for power and control. It's always about power and control. Investigate the U.S. document titled Owning the Weather. The full PDF is available online. Investigate the congressional documents, the presidential documents, the patents, the history of weather warfare and weather modification. It's all there for anybody who chooses to look. If you do so, you'll understand more. Then consider that after 70 years of weather warfare, tearing the climate system apart, and along with many other forms of anthropogenic damage to the biosphere, which many don't want to admit to, all of them impacting the climate system, much of the current geoengineering assault on our planet is for the purpose of masking the true damage already done to the climate system, while at the same time inflicting even more overall damage to the process. Again, this is the pharmaceutical mentality for planet Earth. How many examples do we have to see from the human race? This is the mentality of our modern industrial society, to very destructively try to treat symptoms while making the core of the problem far worse overall. This is the society we live in. Onward. Another week again of planet Earth under siege. And the train of industrialized, militarized civilization is ever more completely off the rails. And the landing will not just be hard, it will be cataclysmic, beyond what almost any yet comprehend. Is this radio show just about doom and gloom? Because many can't take much of that. They want to have something that's somehow painted in this sort of Pollyanna light. And that's why we're in this position to start with. Because this radio show is not about doom and gloom. It's about facing harsh realities head on, in the hopes that a meaningful percentage of the human race may yet wake from their slumber and join the fight for the greater good, while there's yet something to salvage of the planet's life support systems. For the future of our children who we owe our lives to. All of us, especially those who have made the decision to have children, we don't own our lives. We owe them to our children and to all the children of the once thriving, now dying planet Earth. So how's the global economy doing? I've talked about this in previous shows, most shows. For those that are still blindly fixed on the global economic facade, forget about it and move on to something that matters. The notion of endless global economic expansion was always a complete delusion. And it's not collapsing in some sort of cyclical fashion at this time. It's collapsing in a manner from which it will not return. We are not in some sort of cycle that's going to somehow magically bounce back. As stated in previous episodes, the implosion of the biosphere and nature's ability to produce will guarantee the already unfolding economic meltdown. And here's a few recent headlines on that front that we don't see from our corporate mainstream media, whose job it is to pacify us and put us to sleep. One headline: a whiff of panic, global meltdown progressing. Second headline: European bloodbath spills over to U.S. markets. Deutsche Bank and cocoa bonds collapse. Shares at record low. Another headline: European banks face major cash crunch. Another headline: Day of reckoning. The collapse of the too big to fail banks in Europe is here. Another: fear hits Japanese banks. Nikkei plunges. 10-year yield negative for first time ever. What's that mean? A negative yield. It means they're giving money away. They're paying you to take their money. This is the sign of a dying paradigm, absolutely in its death throes. Negative yield rates. And we're about to enter the same territory in the U.S. It's coming. Another headline: capital flight intensifies in Italy and Spain. Curiously, money flows into French banks. People are scurrying for any sort of safe cover. Good luck finding it. Two more headlines: the return of a crisis. Suddenly, banks everywhere are in deep trouble. Final headline: Sears Holding Corporation, that's SHLD, speeds up store closings after disappointing holiday season. Things are not rosy. We just have a massive population looking through rose-colored lenses. That's all. Trouble's not just coming, it's here. It's now. The downward slide will continue to accelerate on all fronts. No matter the season or occasion on the ground, the climate engineering fallout continues to rain a chemical cocktail of contamination down in the entire web of life. And I would ask again, how long can we hold our breath? Of all the issues we face, why do I keep habitually coming back to this issue? And I'll cover more issues in a moment here. But again, no matter what happens to the economy, no matter what happens on many other fronts, we have to be able to breathe. How many other public health and welfare threats are being covered up by the very agencies and experts that are tasked with discovering and disclosing these threats? How many people, do any of us know, that actually behave in a way that truly corresponds with what they claim their convictions to be? How many? The sad, pitiful truth is this: the vast majority of the so-called public protection personnel are completely dependent on the paychecks and pensions and perceived illusion of personal security they receive from their paymasters. Such honorless individuals give willfully their blind obedience to these paymasters. Many would ask, who exactly is at the top of the money control chain of tyranny? And on that question, the answer is this: all roads lead to the central bankers, who can and are printing whatever amount of money they feel they need in order to carry out any and every form of tyranny imaginable. How many Americans are there who have any idea whatsoever about the monetary system and how it actually works? How many Americans are there who have any idea whatsoever about the completely tyrannical private money printing by central bankers? How many Americans have any idea whatsoever about just how much mayhem and carnage is being carried out around the globe from this unlimited and completely out of control money printing? Again, a majority of citizens might be able to perhaps name various facts about various issues, each pertaining to their own personal interests. But how many of these citizens have any knowledge of the most critical issues on which our collective futures are precariously balanced, and really now at this point in free fall? Well, very, very soon, be at a point in time when the vast majority will wonder why they didn't see it coming. We'll very soon be at a point when the vast majority will ponder why they were so willfully blind, why they wasted so much time on so many meaningless activities while the biosphere was rapidly, visibly, and verifiably spiraling into total collapse. Many ask how any of this can be true. Many people ask why others on radio shows don't mention any of these dire issues. And again, I'll state this. Here's the answer to these questions. I have no sponsors to please, no one to answer to. This show is paid for out of our pocket. GeoEngineeringWatch.org is an informational website that does not sell anything whatsoever, and we are non-political. We're simply trying to sound the alarm before there's nothing left worth saving or salvaging. How many spend any time searching for verifiable truths? Any time whatsoever? How much time was spent by how many citizens at the Super Bowl while our children's futures were continuing to crumble? I'm simply asking, where's our priorities? Where are our priorities at this late hour when so much is coming apart, so visibly obvious to any who bother to look? Bouncing back to the agencies whose job it is, the officials and quote-unquote experts whose job it is to cover up dire stories from the public. I want to elaborate on the verifiable specifics of official agencies covering up the nuclear contamination threat, amongst many other things. All should understand this. It's not just the power structure controlled media that doesn't want you to know what's going on. It's also countless agencies, companies, and individuals, all the way down to the bottom floor, so to speak. Why? Because the truth is bad for business, for the perceived personal interests of those that stand to lose something from the full disclosure of reality. For these types of individuals, and they are legion, by the way, they are the majority, doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do is not a part of the equation. Virtue's not a part of the equation. Honor's not a part of the equation. Only their personal interest. And this is the driving force of the vast majority. This is a primary reason why we are in the dark corner that we are all in. As I mentioned earlier in the show, in January, there was a fundraising crab feed in Shasta County. Some local citizens had a small demonstration outside this event. And they were understandably concerned about the potential for radiation contamination in the seafood served at this event. Though I was not involved in this effort to raise awareness, I support those who did. And I received messages, emails, criticizing me for what some citizens did. I was told this, criticism for these protesters, and I was told that, quote, these people are bad for local businesses. That's what I was told. And this is exactly the type of dogmatic, tunnel-visioned ideology that I've already outlined. Where is the concern for the event patrons and their health? Where is the concern for the health of their children? So, on that question, is there any reason to be concerned about the radiation contamination that continues to be spewed from the triple meltdown China syndrome non-stop nuclear volcano that's spiraling ever further out of control, upwind and upcurrent from the U.S. West Coast? The nuclear nightmare with no end in sight that's Fukushima? Let's examine a statement that was part of an email sent to one of the demonstrators. And this email came from a joint FDA, EPA, and NOAA. NOAA is National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. A joint collaboration between these three organizations designed to pacify the population. The study I'm about to read is an excerpt from what I was sent by the demonstrator, which was sent to them from the seafood supplier that supplied to this event in question. Listen to this statement carefully. Quote, in March 2014, FDA issued the following statement. Quote, again, to date, FDA has no evidence that radionuclides from the Fukushima incident are present in the U.S. food supply at levels that would pose a public health concern. The report continues. U.S. seafood is safe and unaffected by radiation contamination from Japanese nuclear power plant incident. Now, it says the FDA has no evidence of the radionuclides. How many people know that monitoring was shut down? The federal government shut down their monitoring after Fukushima happened. I guess when you're not looking for evidence, you won't find any unless you can say everything is safe when it's not. And it says there is no evidence that these radioactive levels are at levels that would pose a public health concern. Understand this, there is no safe level of radiation exposure. No safe level. So to back up the fact that statements like this from agencies we are taught to trust and not to question are simply covering up the facts, covering up the dangers, and more Americans are thankfully waking up to this fact. Let's look at what some watchdog groups say about the radiation threat. Here's a statement from a watchdog group that was funded by the Center of Investigative Reporting, which criticizes the federal government for pulling back on radiation monitoring. This report was from May 10th, 2011, right after Fukushima, right after the monitoring was cut down, as I stated earlier. This report states, and I quote, "With the Japanese nuclear situation still out of control and expected to continue that way for months, and with elevated radioactivity continuing to show up in the U.S., it is inexplicable that the EPA would shut down its Fukushima radiation monitoring effort," said Jeff Rush, executive director of the watchdog group Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility. In a statement, he said the agency found high levels of radiation in drinking water and now was not the time to be pulling their efforts back. He also said the EPA's monitoring program, RadNet, is unreliable and fails to cover large swaths of the West Coast. According to PEER, Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility, the EPA has proposed raising their guideline radiation limits. According to Rush, the new cleanup standards are thousands of times more lax than anything the EPA has ever before accepted. Think about that. How do you tell the public that it's now a safe limit of radiation? Again, there is no safe limit. You raise the safe limit by thousands of times. Think about the absurdity of that. Think about the tyranny of that. And that's exactly what has happened with Fukushima. They raise the safe level and then look at the public and lie with a straight face and say that there is no danger. An absolute lie. How many of these lies do we have to face by how many cowards that are stacked into these organizations that claim to exist for the public welfare, which is an absolute travesty, a lie of unimaginable proportion. Now, again, another statement from a nuclear expert. And this expert is from the University of California. He stated this: I am really horrified that the feds abandoned Fukushima radiation monitoring. This is, again, from an expert from the University of California. His name is Daniel Hirsch. This report goes on to say this: feds abandon extra radiation monitoring of milk, water. The nuclear expert calls this decision staggering. We live in a world of lies. We live in a world of deception, and we live in a world of people who have been bought, sold, and paid for to say and do whatever they're told while the ship sinks around us. And unless we hold these people legally accountable, they will continue to behave in this manner. It's up to us to get informed and understand the dangers we face. It's not about doom and gloom, it's about reality. And again, psychoanalysis from world-renowned psychologists like Dr. Scott Peck state on the record, the hallmark of a healthy mind is an unyielding willingness to face the truth, no matter how bitter or how dire. That's a healthy mind. A mind that runs from the truth is not a healthy mind. Psychoanalysis says so. Reason says so. Logic says so. The final excerpt from this report: the U.S. government has abandoned efforts to monitor elevated levels of radiation that infiltrated the nation's water and milk in the wake of nuclear catastrophe in Japan. Again, final quote from Dr. Daniel Hirsch. A nuclear policy lecture, again, at University of California, Santa Cruz. He said this: it's quite staggering, and it seems to be part of the pattern of the EPA trying to make sure that there are no measurements that could cause people to be concerned. Hide the problem. I've said it over and over and over in show after show after show. That is the goal of most of these public protection governmental agencies, to hide the problem. And I know this for a fact. I deal with some of these people. I know USDA scientists, I know California Fish and Game scientists, and I know that they are hammered. I've been told to my face, if they bring up certain issues, they are absolutely put down. They are told to shut up and don't bring it up again. I know from a PhD lab manager at a major university that has tried to bring up geoengineering and told, quote, taken into a room twice and told, if you continue to bring up geoengineering, there'll be consequences. And I have not heard from her since. Have not heard from her after multiple conversations. On the Delta smelt issue, which many are familiar in Shasta County, major environmental issue, I was contacted by the head of the Delta smelt team, PhD biologist, sent emails, which I still have, I retained, although I haven't heard from him since. He was bringing to my attention, knowing I'm in major research on the geoengineering issue, that the Delta smelt have aluminum adhered to their gills. And every time this researcher tried to bring this up, he was absolutely hammered by his superiors. Until now, I've lost all contact with him. How many headlines do we need, like we've just seen in our local papers, that the salmon are dying in our streams? And yes, there's multiple factors. The water's very warm, which most people won't admit to. But we also have massive spikes of aluminum happening in our tributaries, including the Sacramento River. And I know this for a fact. Why do I know? Because I've been asked 5 years ago into a closed-door meeting with Reading Environmental Waste by people I know there who know I'm studying this issue, and shown tests to my face that proved there were massive spikes of aluminum in the Sacramento River which they could not account for. When will people start to tell the truth? Would I testify to this under oath? Yes, I would. Anytime. And I hope that time comes. I hope that time comes as people wake up. We're all swimming in a sea of lies, deception, and cover-up. And the nuclear nightmare is like countless other issues that are being covered up by the very same agencies who claim to exist for the public's welfare. Threats to public health and safety are only announced when the cover-up of those threats becomes impossible for the so-called public safety agencies to hide any longer. And by then, the damage is done. It's done. I want to give one more example of the kind of catastrophes that are happening under our noses around the globe, and they're not disclosed until they're discovered by the public. One more recent example this week, also nuclear related. 65,000% spike in reported radioactivity after tritium leaks at Indian Point nuclear power plant. 65,000% spike. Think about that. From this report, 2 years after being fined for falsifying safety records, 9 months after transformer explosions occurred at the Indian Point nuclear reactor just 37 miles from Midtown Manhattan, and 2 months after Entergy, the plant's operator, shut down the Unit 2 reactor after a major power outage cut to several control rods, when the company assured us that no radioactivity was released into the environment. This afternoon, this was on the 6th, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said he learned that, quote, radioactive tritium contaminated water, end quote, had leaked into the groundwater at the nuclear facility in Westchester County. Cuomo, in a letter Saturday to the State Health Department and the Department of Environmental Conservation, called for the probe into Indian Point after he said Entergy, the plant's owner, reported, quote, alarming levels of radioactivity at 3 monitoring wells, with one well's radioactivity increasing nearly 65,000%. That's not just a little, is it? That's unimaginable. 65,000% increase. Now, let's take this just a little bit further, as if that wasn't bad enough. Here's a follow-up headline that makes the situation clearly even worse still. Now, we have this to consider. The Indian Point tritium leak was 80% worse than originally reported. Can you imagine 80% worse than a 65,000% spike? New measurements at the Indian Point nuclear power plant in upstate New York show levels of radioactive tritium 80% higher than reported initially. Plant operators, though, insist the spill is not dangerous, as state officials call for a safety probe. This is business as usual. Go back to sleep. There's no danger. Don't worry. Nothing's wrong. Don't look up. That's not an aircraft spraying above your head. Those trees aren't really dying around you. The fish aren't really dying in the stream. The whales really aren't washing up on the beaches. This is the world we live in. Go back to sleep, go to a movie, watch a football game, everything's fine. What did George Bush say after 9/11? Again, I brought this up before, I want to bring it up again. He said, go about your lives, go shopping, go buy something, go consume. Is that what a responsible person does? Is that what a responsible parent does? Don't question anything, don't question the official narrative, don't investigate, don't use your sense of reason, just go buy something, go to a movie or go to a football game. If you think that that's being a responsible citizen, responsible member of this country that so many claim to care about, it's easy to claim to care about something. It's a lot different to actually behave in a way that indicates you care. It's easy to say you care about our troops, for example. This is a really, for so many people, such a source of total hypocrisy, who claim to care about our military brothers and sisters because they put a sticker on their car that says support our troops. What an incredibly apathetic way to show how you care if that's all you do. If that's all you do, and you don't investigate what those troops are being made to do, you don't try to inform the world what's going on, you don't even try to look for yourself, then you're part of the problem, period. Speaking of our troops, and what the U.S. military is doing and what other militaries who are our allies are doing, I would ask this question. Is the U.S. defending Saudi Arabia and Turkey? And if so, why? A recent report from the UK Daily Mail stated this. The Russian military has claimed it has reasonable grounds to suspect that Turkey is making intensive preparations for a military invasion of neighboring Syria. Images of a checkpoint on the border between the Turkish town of Renali and the town of Sarmada in Syria, taken in late October and late January, show a buildup of infrastructure. The Russian military claims the infrastructure could be used for moving troops, ammunition, and weapons. Spokesman Major General Igor Konashikov said in an English language written statement. Another headline to go with this. NATO moves to the east. Battalions in full armor are to be sent to Eastern Europe. They are preparing. Make no mistake about it. They are preparing. Because as the climate implodes and the economy follows, because it can't not follow, again, no matter how much money you print, when the biosphere doesn't produce, the party is over. And as the party ends, the power structure becomes more desperate and more dangerous than ever. And if we are truly patriotic Americans, we have to care about what our government's doing. And that caring goes a lot deeper than football games, a lot deeper than going shopping as George Bush instructed us to do. And I don't put Obama in any different light at all. He is one and the same. In fact, Obama's more dangerous than Bush because Obama is clearly more intelligent than Bush. Sorry for those who like George Bush or those who like Obama. They're both part of the problem. They're both part of the problem. But Obama's extremely dangerous. And again, the hypocrisy that exists in our world for someone like Obama to receive a Nobel Peace Prize truly staggers one's sense of reason. Absolutely staggering. So let's connect the dots on this. Turkey was actively and aggressively doing business with ISIS, buying all the stolen Syrian oil that ISIS could produce and transport to Turkey for about half the current international price on oil. Massive convoys of ISIS-controlled tankers, and many hundreds at a time, by the way, have been clearly photographed from satellite heading into Turkey to deliver this stolen oil. The sale of this stolen oil was a major part of the ISIS funding. Again, ISIS that we've already connected in past shows, John McCain photographed standing with them, saying how intimate he was with ISIS leaders, so on and so forth, all available film footage online. You can see him saying it himself. So we've proven this fact. So a U.S.-spawned, armed-funded ISIS, now Turkey buying oil from ISIS, helping to further fund ISIS. Do any of us really believe that the United States government was not fully aware of this activity of Turkey buying ISIS's oil? And when Russia bombed some of the tanker convoys to cut off this ISIS umbilical cord of oil sales, Turkey shot down one of the Russian fighter jets. And I ask this, what would the U.S. response have been if Russia, or a Russian ally country, would have shot down a U.S. fighter jet without any legitimate justification whatsoever? Think about it. Turkey's also being used as a refugee staging ground, as I've said in past shows. They've allowed refugees to build up in Turkey. They were paid by the EU and others to let them build up, and then flooded into Europe, where unavoidable and increasing chaos is occurring and will continue to occur. And for the record again, why are there so many refugees? Consider all the facts. Primary causes are this: naked aggression of a Western power structure that's wreaking havoc around the globe in its pursuit of unlimited power and resources. And in stating this, it doesn't mean I support Russia or Iran or China. I don't. Are those governments tyrannical? Yes. But it doesn't change the facts on the ground at this moment. It doesn't change the source of the majority of the chaos that we see happening, and that source is the Western power structure at this point. A growing list of countries has been droughted out by the U.S. Back to the refugee crisis and what caused it to occur. Again, we know these countries were droughted out by the U.S. climate modification and NATO climate modification programs. We have the leaders of these countries on the floor of the UN stating so. And you can ask yourself, is it just a coincidence that every single one of the countries that opposes U.S. policy is being droughted out and destabilized? Every single one? All the Middle Eastern countries, now South American countries. Is this just a coincidence? An amazing coincidence? All this drought in a world that's warming and should be raining more. The laws of physics say so. And the only possible factor it's not raining more is because of an atmosphere filled with particulates that we know are related to solar radiation management programs. So when you destabilize these countries, this causes societal unrest, again, destabilization, and various justifications are then utilized to unleash bombing campaigns to destroy the infrastructure of the intended target country. Does anyone remember Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist at all? How many people still think he had those? Do your research, please. Find out what's going on around you. How about the trumped-up threat of Iran, whom the U.S. media tries to make us believe is a threat to global security? Iran, again, I want to point out that Iran hasn't invaded anybody in 230 years. Think about that. While the U.S. has invaded 70 countries in the same amount of time. I'm just asking people to look at facts. Do I agree with the Iranian government and things they do necessarily? No. No, I'm not saying that. But we don't live in a black and white world where we're good and they're bad, as we're taught. As we see these military commercials that say, a global force for good, as if the world is that simple. As if the U.S. military has not been used for a hammer for the global elite to pound down anybody that interferes with their profit-making and power-pursuing adventures. So again, yet again, everything we see unfolding in the Middle East was laid out decades ago, as I've explained in previous shows. The grand plan to expand total U.S. hegemony and control throughout Eurasia is available to any who choose to do an honest investigation. Remember this title, search it online. The Grand Chessboard by Zygmunt Brzezinski. This is the advisor to the global elite, the global core power structure. He has been the advisor since the Johnson administration. Think about that. This is the kind of people that run the world. And his plan, the grand chessboard, was to topple the Eurasian countries. We know from General Wesley Clark, right after 9/11, he was told, this is also on the record, that a plan was in place immediately after 9/11 to topple 7 Middle Eastern countries. What's happened? What's happened there? Is that all just a coincidence? It's on the record. Wesley Clark stated this on the record. Can we not see that the 9/11 issue is an immense part of this equation? Again, those who want to know what really happened there, aside from all the other facts, just the simple laws of physics and what 2,500 architects and engineers have to say about this issue, if you really care about the truth, show up and find out what you don't know. Because if you keep your head in the sand, if you don't want to know, if watching a football game or something else is more important to you, then you really don't care about the truth. Don't claim to. Show up March 12th, Reading, at the Reading Library, 2 o'clock. Free presentation, free DVDs, everything's free. Nobody's selling anything. We just want to get the truth out. I'll be there. I'll be there to answer any questions I can and dialogue with anybody who will listen to the truth. The bottom line is this. The grand plan to expand this global hegemonic power is completely out of control. The power structure cancer and their plans do not include you. Understand that. Understand that. We don't have a country with a government. We have a government that owns a country. That's what we have. Understand that. American citizens are very rapidly a growing problem for the global power elite. We're not just expendable to them, but we're an ever-increasing liability. Do you really think that the criminal cabal that's masquerading as our government is going to stand by and allow a population of well over 300 million people, and many of them armed, by the way, to fully wake up to what's been done to them? Do you think they're going to stand by and let that happen? Think about it. To clarify, when I say government, by the way, I mean those behind the curtain at the very top. The vast majority of those carrying out the insanity, people in agencies like I just named, are simply obedient paid slaves to do whatever they're told for a paycheck and a pension. They're paid minions, and this includes the so-called elected officials, also in agencies and offices, all too willing to do the bidding of those further up the ladder, so that they themselves, they hope, by conforming to those dictates from their superiors, will eventually benefit themselves personally by making them recipients of raises or promotions as rewards for their unquestioning conformity. This is how the system works. Look at our military. We see those in our military who try to stand up and tell the truth. What happens to them? They're booted out of the service. Booted out. But those who simply go along and toe the line, for the people behind the curtain that are really exercising the power, those people get promoted. And that's the way the system works. And I hope our military brothers and sisters wake up to this fact. And many of them know. I know they know. I'm communicating with a retired Air Force general and a retired military general, Army general, And I've communicated with a number of other people. Was contacted this week by a Marine pilot, a U.S. Marines fighter pilot. Going to meet with him soon. People are waking up. Our military brothers and sisters who have signed up for honorable reasons need to wake up. Because they're being told, and this is important to understand, our military brothers and sisters are being told that the activities they're engaged in are for the good of the planet and the good of the country. This is a lie of unimaginable proportions, an absolute lie. Don't believe the lie. If you're in the military and you're listening, question, investigate, and quit believing the lies. And again, as I stated, though I salute the motives of our military men and women, I'll continue to plead with them to wake up and investigate what they're actually participating in. Please wake up. Fulfill your oaths to protect the Constitution, the country, and your citizens, as I've stated before, from all threats, foreign and domestic. That's the oath you've taken. I've already outlined some of the means by which climate engineering and weather warfare were used to topple and thus control Eurasian countries. Again, every one of these countries subjected to record-setting drought. Iraq, Iran, Syria, Libya, Afghanistan, other countries as well. It's happening in South America now. Venezuela's collapsing because their hydropower is imploding because there's no rain happening there. It's happening throughout South America. Same as North America. Climate engineering is tearing the planet apart. And if we don't wake up to that soon, we'll have nothing left to salvage. Anyone who has the courage to do a bit of honest, objective research and to look up into our skies can recognize that we, U.S. citizens, are now being subjected to the same all-out, highly toxic weather warfare assault that's been used on our so-called enemies around the globe. And if you think for a moment that the global elite, the super rich, the super powerful, the money-printing central bankers that run militaries, which includes the U.S. military, if you think these global elite give a damn about you, your future, or your children's future, you're living in an illusion. Those that truly rule the world, the global elite, not our so-called elected officials that merely do the bidding of those behind the curtain, not them, but the global elite, if you feel that they have your best interest in mind, you're living in an illusion. I hope that those who listen to this show have already investigated facts brought up in previous shows. Facts like the purchasing of some 2.4 billion rounds of .40 caliber hollow point ammunition by agencies like Homeland Security. Facts like our doorstep being GPSed in the last census without any legitimate justification given from the Census Bureau. And I know because I tried very diligently to call and inquire. No reason was given. Facts like the drone bases being set up all over the country and the military exercises taking place on U.S. soil. The chess pieces are being put in place, and the U.S. population is absolutely not only expendable to those in power, but a liability. And if you think you're not breathing what's being sprayed overhead, you're ignoring the facts. And the effects of what's happening are not going to go away unless we, as citizens of this country, find out what's going on, join together, and peacefully stand against it, and wake up our military brothers and sisters, whom we need to wake up, or we have no chance. We have no chance. If our military brothers and sisters don't wake up and help us expose the truth, we have no chance. The storm is already unfolding, and we're all in it. It starts with the atmospheric assault called geoengineering, aka climate engineering, aka solar radiation management, also termed stratospheric aerosol injection. These are all science terms. Look them up, investigate. These programs are taking place over our heads each and every day. No matter what else happens in the world, no matter what goes wrong, these spraying programs can be used to take out entire populations anytime those in power choose to alter the mix and make it more lethal. At minimum, we're breathing highly toxic elements every single day. Investigate what you're not being told by mainstream media or official sources. And importantly, never, ever underestimate your ability to make a difference in the battle for the truth and the greater good. Share what you learn with others. Pass on credible documentation to back up information that you're sharing. That's important. Pass on data. Any individual listening to this show at this very moment could be the grain of sand that tilts the scale in the right direction. It could be you. That choice is yours. Help us to sound the alarm. Help us to reach a critical mass of awareness. Help us to alter the course of the Titanic on which we are all currently passengers. This is our responsibility. It's not an option, it's an obligation to our children and all the children around the globe. Until next week, this is Dane Wigington with GeoEngineeringWatch.org.